recent history of the valleys of South Wales has been a tale of the rise and fall of heavy industry and of music. Before the Industrial Revolution, much of Wales was given to farming, with busy trade in a few towns such as Wrexham, Cardiff and Swansea. Wales had a distinctive tradition of folk music. However, in the 19th century, things began to change. This is the story of one part of Wales, along the Upper Rhondda Valley, how it gave birth to a brass band which survived all the changes that followed and remains a household name to music followers throughout the country.
The valleys, all the forests, going all the way from Blancombe, Blenrhondda, Blancombe, all the way down to Pontypridd. When they say a squirrel, could go all the way, and the trees all the way down to Pontypridd for miles.
There were more sheep in the valley in the old days than there were people. But when the Industrial Revolution came, people realized that this was the new Klondike.
And of course, once coal had been found, then obviously it became a different landscape completely.
Then came the miners. In a few decades, coal transformed the valleys from green pastures into an industrial giant. Once peaceful and idyllic, the Rhondda Valley changed dramatically, becoming black and barren. Coal fueled the steam engines that powered the Industrial Revolution, pushing it out across the globe. The population boom was enormous. In 1851, there were just under 1,000 people in the valleys. By 1891, it had exploded to almost 90,000. People rushed to capitalise on the wealth coming from the mountains.
And they brought people in from West Wales, North Wales, who came to work in the mines.
This has contributed tremendously, I think, to the evolution of the musical and cultural development of the top of the valley.
But while only few enjoyed immense wealth, the majority were poor, working class people who were exploited by the industries. The nature of the work down the pits meant that the risks were high and many lost their lives. As the mining communities were established, the demand for entertainment grew and things began to happen. It was in 1893 that the Parc&Dare band was established.
It was formed originally as a Park drum and fife band. That was in 1893. Immediately after, then they decided that they wanted a brass band because brass bands becoming very popular throughout the UK.
And they eventually put money into it. And I think the instruments came from Belgium. And the tale goes that they all ran from down from Park down to the railway station when the instruments arrived. And the first one they got there picked the smallest instruments, and the last one they got there had the biggest instrument. And that's how eventually the band formed.
From the beginning, the bands were interwoven with the social fabric, from home to workplace.
The affinity between the bands and workplaces was largely as a result of the coal owners themselves. Parc&Dare band was based on the two collieries in our neighbouring tributary valley of Park, the Park and the Dare collieries.
The band then changed its name to Parc&Dare Band, Parc&Dare Workmen's Band.
But unfortunately for this unspoilt landscape, the Industrial Revolution ripped apart the valleys, leaving them black and barren, with scars that are still visible to this day. Men gathered together to keep their spirits high. Like many bands of their time, Parc&Dare helped forge a local identity. They were so popular and well supported that funding came from colleagues and locals.
The initial funding was from subscriptions from the bandsmen themselves, but of course when the band changed its name to Parc&Dare Workmen's Band, the workers themselves gave a penny per week out of their wages.
The band were also given a welcome boost by a major local benefactor. Lord David Davis had come to find coal in the area in the mid-19th century.
The first colliery that he opened, I think it was the Maindy colliery, he ran out of money. And for 3 weeks, all the people went to sink in the colliery. They worked free of charge. And then eventually he opened the Parc&Dare colliery.
The first official sponsor of the band. The band provided entertainment for his garden parties.
He came here with, I would say, practically nothing, and then he went from a millionaire. But he worked hard, and he did a lot for the people in the valley.
With the band's now established players in the local area, they needed somewhere more regular to practice.
They practiced early on the coffee house at the Pengelly, but in the early 1900s, Lord Davis, Llandin, provided what is termed as the band pavilion.
They used that until up until about 1935, and then that was knocked down to make way for the railways for the coal.
The pavilion allowed the band somewhere warm to rehearse in the winter. With the panels removed, it also allowed them to showcase themselves to the public in the summer. Over the following decades, the Parc&Dare band rehearsed in so many places that they became known as the Bedouin Band. Without permanent rehearsal facilities for years, they practiced at the local Legion Club, cricket club, and infant school. It was only in 1993 that they were able to buy their own band room.
So we have a resident place to rehearse, keep our records, and of course, a fantastic library of music.
As well as a place to rehearse, the band also had the splendid Parc&Dare Theatre for concerts. Built in 1903 and initially a public library, over the years this was to be the setting for many great Parc&Dare band concerts. In its early years, the band was involved in numerous activities with the local community, from charity performances to war memorials after the outbreak of World War I. In a short time, though, competition became the driving force of the band.
The first competition I go back in time, that they won was over, I think it's over in Blaengunwy. And they walked the mountain. They walked from Park over to Blaengunwy, and they won the first prize over there.
At a time when banding was hugely popular nationally, they fought their way up to Class A in 1914, the highest possible level. From here on, in what is now called the Championship section, they continued to flourish.
Well, competition, I think, is the life part of the band. It's important, you know, you've got something to look forward to, something to work for.
A vital part of the community, the bands were linked with everything that went on there. Conditions in the pits were incredibly difficult and often extremely dangerous, prompting regular strikes. This mirrored conditions nationally. Particularly after World War I, many workers were suffering lower wages and worsening work conditions.
In the interwar periods, the valleys in general and the Rhondda in particular suffered grievously through industrial unrest and disruption.
It was a very difficult time for families because there was no money coming in at all. But the band did a lot of good work. They went around playing and raising money, putting into the fund for people who can park, to go to the soup kitchens, etc., to have food.
And the choirs and bands and churches and chapels became focal points whereby people would gain spiritual inspiration to battle with the terrible conditions in which they existed.
It was at this time when the workers and the community needed the band the most. It was a place of relief from the workplace and the family. The band did everything they could to support their families.
And the band asked were in busking. They went to different places, to North Wales, went up to England, busking and sending money back.
Several of the players went down to Cornwall, and of course there's a close association with Cornwall, great brass band country. They sacrificed a lot of their time to go down and busk and bring back money in order for the parents to feed the children.
The band helped provide continued relief and entertainment throughout the 1920s and 30s. At the beginning of the 1930s, the bands began to change and radio was becoming popular. Many musical directors and conductors over the years have influenced their direction greatly. Here, it was the turn of Mr. Hayden Bebb.
One of the most famous conductors Parc&Dare band had. He's from Park, like myself, must be the heir of Park, and then I think in about 1933-34 he took over Parc&Dare band.
Hayden Bebb began to lead the band through one of their most successful periods so far. As they built momentum, their role was to become even more important, although not in the way they had planned. In 1939, the Second World War broke out. Again, the community lent on the band's shoulder for comfort and relief to get through the hard times together.
The band during the war has played many concerts and raised a lot of money for various funds for the war.
The band has always been an integral part of the community, and the people of Park so supportive.
There were local Eisteddfodau band competitions which helped to raise the morale.
As coal mining was so important to the war effort, many band members avoided conscription. They played wherever they could to help lift spirits. often with concert broadcasts on the wireless.
Well, the band during the war did a lot of radio shows, particularly Music While You Work, where people in the factories then were putting on the music at a certain time and they'd listen to different programs, and the band did a tremendous amount of that.
I think it is so important during those years that because generally the country, it was going through a rough time, and particularly then when the bombing occurred at Combe Park.
The war was literally brought home in April 1941 when the German bomber raid came up the valley.
My recollection of that terrible night when the bombs fell on Combe Park are quite stark, because my father was one of the main officials with the heavy rescue unit. We knew that something terrible was about to happen because we could hear this bomber over the village.
They had dropped, first of all incendiary bombs all around the colliery, lighting the colliery up, and then the bombs are dropping, and they bombed Trehan Street in Combe Park and the Park Road.
And my father never came back for 3 days. And when he did, his hair had turned white, because he'd gone in to pull bodies out, and he was never the same afterwards.
Many of the 27 victims were young. This part of the valleys was supposed to be a place of sanctuary. Young evacuees had even been brought here. The funeral was held a week later, with the band heading the procession.
Oh, that'll always stick in my mind. At the band playing the funeral march coming down Combe Park, marching in front of the hearses, and the army set marching down with them as well, you know. A very moving time.
There were very few families in the area, in the village, who weren't affected by the bombing.
So many young people died that day, and it was a tragic story.
As the war came to a close, the community and the nation itself began to recover and get back on its feet. As people began trying to move onwards, so band competitions started to pick up again in earnest.
Contesting is the lifeblood of banding.
If you work harder and encourage the band to come to rehearsals, etc., it gives them something to look forward to.
Hayden Bebb was beginning to push the band to new limits, and not long afterwards, in the mid-1940s, they appeared at the Royal Albert Hall, securing third place in the national championships.
A very big occasion. It's the first time that they'd held the competition in the Albert Hall after the war, and Parc&Dare band came third.
In those days, you were up against all the great bands, your Morris Motors, your Jaguar Car Works, your Black Dyke Mills, your Grindthorpe Collieries and the likes, and it was such an achievement to the area.
Hayden Bebb continued to even greater success.
They won every competition, I think, in about 1946.
After an opportunity came for Hayden to expand his musical horizons, he moved to Enfield. However, sadly he died shortly after moving, and before realising his full potential. The band's success continued though, with other conductors such as Harry Nuttall leading them through many competitions and radio broadcasts.
Every conductor's got something different to offer, and that's where I'm fortunate really to be in the band, the calibre of Parc&Dare.
Shortly afterwards came perhaps the greatest conductor the band ever had.
Yayan, my mentor, my teacher, and a great euphonium player, great instrumentalist. What more can I say?
Well, I joined the band in the 40s, the Parc&Dare Junior Band, and then I took over as conductor, the MD of the band, in 1965.
Yayan created history by building up a continuous stream of very fine young musicians.
And in 1959, then we made banding history between 59 and 62, when they were the only youth band or school youth band ever to graduate from the C section to the championship section.
We won the third section, the second section, and then of course championship section coming second to Corey.
They achieved all kinds of local success in competitions, and also went on to win at the Albert Hall.
And probably that's the highlight of my playing career, because we were all boys, but playing like men.
By now, many of the pits were starting to close. Unemployment was rife throughout the valleys, and the band could no longer rely on funding from the pits. But in spite of this backdrop, Yayan and the band fought on.
And he continued his tremendous development of the band, ever more ambitious, ever more successful, ever more popular.
Oh yeah, we won lots of competitions, yes. Won everything in Wales, won the Miners' Gala 3 years on the trot, a hat-trick. We won a hat-trick with the National Eisteddfod. Won the league championship 3 times as a hat-trick, but won the league many, many times apart from that.
Winning everything in Wales, the band went on to win the national championships 3 times. They won the National Eisteddfod on many occasions, including a hat-trick of wins in 1976, 77 and 78. They were the only band in Wales ever to achieve this. Here they are in the Albert Hall in 1976.
We have the Welsh champions here tonight, and here with a sparkling arrangement of Men of Harlech is Ian Morgan and the Parc&Dare Band.
As well as the competitions and fantastic showcases, they started to appear more on television too, with BBC Two's Best of Brass.
Oh yeah, big thing, very exciting thing, and something for the band to work for as well.
Best of Brass series was probably one of the biggest things that happened to the band. We had a 4-page spread in the Radio Times. We had a TV programme.
We came first, and we had 2 second prizes, which ran in Wales. And for the Best of Brass on BBC Two up in England, we played against Fair Aviation Band. We got through to the final. Fair Aviation won it, we became a close second.
As well as Best of Brass, the 80s saw the band play in 3 European Championships, release material on CD, and appear at the Royal Albert Hall in the National Championships again. They went to Lucerne in Switzerland with the BBC, who made their first ever digital recording. There also included an appearance in another popular television programme of the time, with an appearance on The District Nurse.
We all had to have haircuts of the period. The BBC came up and handed us £10 each to go to the barber to get your head shaved.
And the band had to dress up in old clothes, miners, etc., old clothes, have the haircuts. Malcolm had the long hair, he had to have his haircut for the show.
And we had to walk on set, so I was immediately picked on and said no. I had to have my haircut further again. So when I went back then with the band, they just turned around and said, somebody shouted out, change the balls. My head was like a tennis ball.
And they had some of the junior band then dressed up as children in short trousers, etc., for the show.
In 1984, Ian left the band to concentrate on youth music with the local authorities. However, the band's popularity continued, particularly through strong ties with the greatly renowned Treorchy Male Voice Choir. The choir followed another strong Welsh musical tradition, with its roots also set in the Industrial Revolution.
Every Good Friday, we have a concert in the Parc&Dare Theatre with the Treorchy Male Voice Choir and the Parc&Dare Band.
One of the highlights, there's always been a great relationship, a close relationship between ourselves and Treorchy Male Voice.
The queue of people waiting to get in would extend right over the river bridge and halfway up the main street. It was rumoured that it was more difficult to get Parc&Dare concert tickets than to get tickets for the Wembley Cup final. The brass band movement and the Welsh male voice choir tradition represent the last vestiges of working class music as we know it today.
When you're growing up in the locality, I mean, it's the brass band and the choirs are things that stand out. It's something that you aim, that you want to get into, either the male voice choir or into the Parc&Dare band.
Both have their roots in the local community, in the mining and in the mining industry. And also, they are very popular with the public.
In the 90s, the band's strength waned. With the economy in the area declining further, there was not only less funding, but less people to join the band. At one point, they dwindled to only a few members. Things became a struggle. The focus moved to finding a new band room and securing grants to support the band. There were highlights, including the band's centenary in 1993. In the same year, they finally managed to buy their own practice room. It was mainly the strength of a few members, though, who held the band together, notably Malcolm Pickin. By the millennium, things were starting to look up. With a wash of new, younger members, fresh life was injected into the Parc&Dare band. They began branching out musically. Highlights came with an appearance at the Rugby League Cup final at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff.
The build-up is in full flow inside the stadium, and we'll be enjoying that as well as introducing you to so many aspects of what's to come over the next 45 minutes before the 2:30 kick-off of Leeds against Bradford, the Power Gen Challenge Cup.
The band also played with the Grenadier Guards, who marched through Treorchy to commemorate VE Day in 2005.
In Treorchy, the Grenadier Guards marched through the town as the people of the Rhondda remembered the sacrifices of the war.
The innovative years saw the commencement of the Welsh Brass Arts Festival, an opportunity for funding to inaugurate a festival of music with the Welsh arts.
Acts and what have you from all parts of the world, something totally different just to a brass band venue.
It's excited me to be able to play different sorts of music, and I think that that is so healthy that I think it's great that a brass band is doing that as well.
People, love it, and just the kind of the idea, the whole concept of having a harp with a brass band. It's kind of really weird, but people like it for that reason. Fun crowd, and yeah, it's a great pleasure.
Particularly popular were Joji Hirota and the Japanese taiko drummers who came over from the Far East.
So many audience appeared for just a concert, so I was so surprised how possibly people here is very interested for our kind of music, world music, or percussion music, Japanese taiko drum music.
And the world-renowned Russian Cossacks. These concerts always ensured a sellout at the Parc&Dare Theatre. Guests included the Black Dyke Mills Band, Brighouse and Rastrick, and the Legion Band, who were all involved in the festival from 2001 to 2004. Big West End stars, such as Peter Carey, the lead in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera, also played.
This orchestra, this brass band, are exceptional in terms of brass band. You saw tonight there was 2 or 3, or a lot more than that, solo instrumentals by various members of the ensemble there. And they were just, the standard was just exceptionally high.
An opportunity then to see some of the great musical acts throughout the world.
The rebuilding of the band was confirmed in 2007, when yet again they appeared at the Royal Albert Hall, this time with Major Peter Parks conducting.
It's not just a means of learning how to play in a brass band, it also shows them other music, because bands pinch other people's music. So you'll hear sort of jazz music, you'll hear little bits out of symphonies, and like today there's been an overture written for the orchestra. Well, we don't care about that, we'll have it if it's good.
And so to the present. The band continues its concerts and competitions. In 2009, the junior band was successful at the Swansea Youth Festival by taking second and third prizes, and in 2008 achieved first place.
A very fruitful way of recruitment for the senior band and ensuring its perpetuity.
It's a period of learning, it's an apprenticeship.
And it also helps, I think, when they go from the valleys, when they go to college or university, etc., they've got music then, which helps them a great deal.
Still going strong, the junior members are as enthusiastic as ever about Parc&Dare.
I give something back to the community, but at the same time, I do go out with my friends.
When you have concerts, you meet loads of new friends as well.
Fun, and you get to do competitions and concerts.
Over 100 years and more, this small band, the Parc&Dare Band, have been an essential part of the area's social and cultural fabric.
I'm proud to be part of this band because it's been going on for over 100 years.
We're very lucky, I think, at Ray. But a lot of people have put a lot of time into it, haven't they? You know, a lot of old conductors giving up their free time and teaching young people to come on to play and to sing, etc. It's a culture of the valleys.
If you mention the Parc&Dare Band to anyone within the local area or further around, everyone knows who they are.
It's been a labour of love for both of us. We've derived the most amazing satisfaction.
I think it's been down to hard work and diligence, commitment, and with people all over the years, just for the sake of promoting the name of Parc&Dare, the name of our heritage, and let's hope it goes on for years and years to come.
The Parc&Dare Band have survived over 100 years and have battled on through many challenges. But, as history has shown, Parc&Dare is one band, loyal and determined, and whatever may come their way, they will still be here in the future, and people will still hear that unique warm sound of the brass band filling the valleys with colour.